start our journey at Cressona, at the north end of the yard. Here we see a colliery crew heading up the valley to the mines. Beckville. Here's another colliery crew coming down towards Cressona. This is an earlier picture when the 1800s were being used on the Mine Hill branch, again at Beckville. A westbound train at the Powder Mill Bridge, about a mile above Beckville. Between this bridge and Beckville, along the railroad, the Laughlin and Rand Company for many years operated a mill to make blasting powder that was used in the mines. This operation closed down before World War I. Another westbound train on the Powder Mill Bridge, this one pulled by a 2000. Now we have a caboose hop coming down to Cressona with a 1600. This view is of the bridge at Glenworth, taken from the Hillside Road. The train is westbound, pulled by a Baldwin road switcher. This is an earlier picture showing the Lehigh Valley Bridge at Glenworth. This bridge was removed in 1953. The westbound Reading train is being pulled by an 1800. This picture again shows the Lehigh Valley Bridge. The eastbound train is in charge of a 2000. It was standard practice for steam engines to be headed west on the Mine Hill in later years, always running backward, coming home to Cressona. Another view of the bridge at Glenworth. Two more Glenworth scenes. Here we have a 3000 heading for Sheridan, taken just below Westwood Junction. Another colliery crew heading for the west end of the county, also taken at Westwood. Following is a series of views taken at Westwood. This is an eastbound train coming from the west end. The right-hand track leads to Minersville. Here's an official train heading for Minersville, drawn by an Alco road switcher. It looks like these two conductors are trying to decide which train is to move first. In earlier days, when passenger service still operated on the Mine Hill, an operator was stationed at Westwood. Here is an earlier picture showing a colliery crew heading for the mines, going under the Lehigh Valley Bridge at Westwood. Now we leave Westwood and go out to Tremont. This train is about to cross the highway just below Tremont, heading for Cressona. This train is coming back from Sheridan, going through Tremont. The passenger station is on the right. And now a rail ramble coming down from Tremont towards Pine Grove, pulled by a Baldwin road switcher. The Crusader at Pine Grove, another rail ramble. The Crusader was the Reading's crack train between Philadelphia and Jersey City. This shows the Lebanon local crew switching at Pine Grove. They worked up as far as Pine Grove from Lebanon. Another rail ramble at Pine Grove, heading down towards Lebanon. The Cressona crew that brought the coal down to Pine Grove for the Pennsylvania Power and Light's Pine Grove Power Plant. Here we have the Lebanon crew returning from Pine Grove, crossing the trestle at Sudburg with a Baldwin switcher. Another ramble below Sudburg, heading for Lebanon. Now we will backtrack to Port Clinton. This is a rail ramble coming from Tamaqua, about to switch onto the main line to Reading. In 1831, the Little Schuylkill Railroad began operations between this point and Tamaqua. It was built as a feeder to the Schuylkill Canal, as the P&R line from Reading to Pottsville was not built until about 10 years later. Off the picture to the left was the canal basin, where coal and other freight was transferred from rail to canal. It was because this was an important point on the canal that the town was named Port Clinton in honor of Governor Clinton of the state of New York. A freight train at the same location coming off the Little Schuylkill line. In 1830, the Little Schuylkill Railway ordered 2 steam locomotives from England, the Catawissa and the Comet. Each weighed about 9 tons and were the finest steam locomotives in Schuylkill County. Here we see one of the latest steam locomotives to be used on the Little Schuylkill, a 2100 weighing almost 300 tons. It's rounding the curve below Molino, bound for Tamaqua. This is an iron horse ramble passing Molino on its way to Tamaqua. An eastbound freight coming down the Little Schuylkill near Dreyersville. A westbound freight at Dreyersville. Following are a number of pictures at this location along the Little Schuylkill River. There was a period of several years when the Reading ran quite a number of rail rambles up the Little Schuylkill branch. In later years, all these rambles that were steam operated were pulled by 2100s. Here's a westbound freight from Dreyersville running along the base of Hawk Mountain. A westbound freight at Rouches below New Ringgold. This was one of the first electromotive road diesels put in service by the Reading. A westbound ramble at Rouches. Next, an Alco Road freight engine rounding the curve between Rouches and New Ringgold. Another ramble crossing the bridge at New Ringgold, heading for Tamaqua. A westbound freight at Reynolds below Tamaqua. Next, we have a series of views of the Tamaqua yards. When the coal business was prospering, this was a busy place. It was the original destination of the Little Schuylkill Railroad. Here we see the yards and the engine facilities. Off in the distance to the left is the passenger station. Another view of the yard showing the line connecting the Reading Railroad with the Lehigh and New England Railroad on the other side of the highway. In those days, 20-hundredths and 30-hundredths were very common in the Tamaqua area. This shows the scale crew, and a variety of motive power. Notice the swinging footbridge across the Little Schuylkill. It was for the convenience of the employees. And now, a Reading Rail ramble coming up on the Lehigh and New England to connect with the Reading at Tamaqua. This is a view in the upper yards at Tamaqua. Here are the diesel facilities. In the background you can see the Tamaqua wreck train. There were two engine houses at Tamaqua. To the left is the newer one, which was built to take care of the large locomotives. The one to the right is the old one, built many years ago and no longer able to handle the large locomotives. At the present time, there is a supermarket on this spot. The line from Pottsville connected with the Little Schuylkill at Tamaqua by means of a Y. Trains could come up from Pottsville and either go around to the left towards East Mahanoy Junction or to the right towards Port Clinton. Here we have a passenger train coming around the Y from East Mahanoy Junction heading for Pottsville. The passenger station is in the background. This is not the engine from a circus train. It is a Fairbanks Morse Trainmaster demonstrator. On the strength of this demonstration, the Reading bought a number of these locomotives. Another view of the old roundhouse. If you look closely, you can see the turntable in front of it. It was much too small to take care of the large engines that were used out of Tamaqua. They had to be turned on the Y. Here we see the engine houses and the diesel facilities. For many years, these electromotive road engines were the standard motive power on the Catawissa line. Later, when the second-generation diesels came out, these electromotive units took over. A General Electric and an Alco freight unit waiting in the yard. Now we leave Tamaqua. This is the King Coal leaving the Taggartsville Tunnel, coming down the valley towards Tamaqua on its way to Philadelphia. Originally, the Little Schuylkill Railroad was built to Tamaqua. Later, it was extended to Tamaqua, where it joined the Catawissa Railroad. Next, we have a series of views at the east end of the Taggartsville Tunnel, about a mile above Tamaqua. This train is just leaving the tunnel. A westbound train heading towards the tunnel. Another westbound train about to enter the tunnel. We are now at the west end of the tunnel. This is a 3000 on its way to St. Nicholas Yard. Another westbound train at the tunnel. This train, very likely, will head up to Newberry over the Catawissa line. Toward the end, it was common to use 4 or 5 of these units on Catawissa trains, and also 4 or 5 mid-train helpers on the heavy trains. This is the curve just beyond the tunnel, where the line heads up through the gap towards Barnesville. Another view at the same spot, a group of 4 Baldwin road switchers. An iron horse ramble coming down from Barnesville, going around the curve. It is about to enter the tunnel at Taggartsville. Another westbound freight train. This is a ramble leaving the tunnel, heading for East Mahanoy Junction, with Baldwin switchers as helpers. East Mahanoy Junction. Following are a number of views taken at this location. Notice the hall semaphores and the tower. This train was heading for Gordon. The East Mahanoy Junction passenger station is in the background. The tower was removed after continuous traffic control was installed. This train is about to turn off and go up the Catawissa to Newberry. A caboose hop on the way back to Gordon. Another view of a Catawissa freight. This train is coming off the Catawissa, heading for Tamaqua. Here is a ramble about to turn off and go up the Catawissa line. They never used 2100s for the rail rambles on the Catawissa because of their size. Another Catawissa freight. This one is being pulled by General Motors hood units. We're now going beyond East Mahanoy Junction towards the Buck Mountain Tunnel. Here is a train coming off the Catawissa from Hawks, swinging around and about to enter the Buck Mountain Tunnel, heading for St. Nicholas or Gordon. Hawks is not a town. It is just a location on the railroad and was named after an early landowner. It was here that both the Reading and the Jersey Central maintained yards and was an important interchange point. Now the train is entering the east portal of the tunnel. The highway is directly above the tunnel entrance. This tunnel was completed in 1859. Before being put in service, it was the site of a serious riot when workers barricaded themselves in the tunnel in a dispute over wages. This is an eastbound train between St. Nicholas and Mahanoy City. Several years after the railroad was dieselized, there was a shortage of motive power, and a number of 2100s were returned to service, operating out of Gordon as helpers. Here we see one of them passing Gilberton, heading home to Gordon. Next are several views of trains in the Gilberton area. The stream is Mahanoy Creek. One of the early electromotive diesels heading west at Gilberton. This is Gordon, in the cut at the east end of the Gordon Yards, a 3000. One of the 2100 helpers at Gordon. Now, several of them rest in the Gordon engine yard. Here we see one of the Gordon helpers getting a train started, pushing it up to Locust Summit, one of the heaviest grades on the Reading. Looks like he means business. Another view of the engine yards showing the coal dock, the engine house, and a number of locomotives, all steam. This was also the location of the foot of the lower Gordon Plain. 2 planes were used to lift rail traffic to the summit of the Broad Mountain. It was then moved down through the Hectorsville Valley to Cressona. The planes were abandoned in 1896. They were designed by Rufus Wilder, resident engineer of the Mine Hill and Schuylkill Haven Railroad. Now things are changing. Here we see several cold 3000s in storage at Gordon. The end is near. A 2100 at the head of the train between Gordon and Lavelle, working hard. A 2100 helper pushing a train up towards Locust Summit. An Iron Horse Ramble coming down from Locust Summit, heading for Gordon. A westbound freight near Lavelle coming up towards Locust Summit. And here's his helper. Eastbound freight coming down grade, about to cross the highway at Lavelle. The helper coming down after giving a westbound train a boost, heading home for Gordon. This Iron Horse ramble is going up the Locust Summit grade. A westbound freight at Locustdale. A 2100 backing up the Locust Summit grade. That's the Locust Summit breaker in the right background. Here the railroad enters Northumberland County. An eastbound freight going down the grade towards Gordon. Far off in the distance is the town of Ashland. Now we go back to East Mahanoy Junction and up the Catawissa. This is a westbound train on the Catawissa, a mile or two above East Mahanoy Junction, heading for Hawks. A Reading Colliery crew in Hawks Yard. Now a westbound Catawissa freight switching in Hawks Yard. Tamaqua, a Reading Colliery crew heading upgrade. Tamaqua is a small village between Hawks and Quaycake. It was an important point on the railroad because it was here that the Little Schuylkill Railroad joined the Catawissa. Also, the Jersey Central connected with these two lines on this site. Now, another Reading Colliery crew passing Quaycake on the way upgrade towards Ryan's Cut. This cut is at the east end of the mountain, where the railroad swings around to the north. It can be seen very plainly from Route 309 above Barnesville. On the left can be seen the Lehigh Valley-Reading interchange track. A unit coal train going upgrade passing Quaycake with 5 electromotive hood units at the head and more as mid-train helpers. A Reading Colliery crew coming down the grade from Ryan's Cut, passing Quaycake. That line in the background is the Lehigh Valley line from Delano over to Black Creek Junction. It is no longer in existence. A westbound Catawissa train with 2 Baldwin road switchers as helpers going under the Lehigh Valley Bridge at Quaycake. A westbound Catawissa freight with 3 electromotive road engines at the same spot. Going around the bend near Ryan's Cut, heading for the tunnel at Lofty. This is a westbound train beyond Ryan's Cut, nearing Lofty. Notice that this train has 5 electromotive road units, which was rather unusual. They normally use 3 or sometimes 4 units. An eastbound train coming out of the tunnel at Lofty. A view from above the tunnel showing a westbound train passing Lofty. And now entering the tunnel. This is a divide between the Schuylkill River Basin and the Susquehanna River Basin. After the train passes through the tunnel, it will gradually drop down grade towards Ringtown. A westbound train heading for the tunnel at Lofty. Directly above the tunnel can be seen faintly the Jersey Central's branch heading over towards Silver Brook to the right. An eastbound train dropping down grade, crossing the highway at Lofty. Another westbound train about to enter the tunnel. This is the west end of the Lofty Tunnel. This crew is bound for Tamaqua with two Fairbanks Morse trainmasters. They were very seldom used on the Catawissa. Now an eastbound train, heading upgrade towards the Lofty Tunnel, passing Girard Manor. These helpers are both 1700s with auxiliary water tenders. These helpers operated out of West Milton. A westbound freight at Brandonville at the railroad crossing. These are the mid-train helpers on a coal unit train going towards Rupert. This view was taken between Brandonville and Ringtown. An eastbound rail ramble coming around the curve below Ringtown, heading for Tamaqua. An eastbound freight passing Ringtown. Here we see a westbound freight train crossing the long fill north of Ringtown. Both the bright yellow head-end units and the mid-train helpers can be seen. When the road was first built, this valley was crossed by a long wood truss bridge. Later, the bridge was replaced with a steel trestle. Finally, back in the 1920s, it was filled in and the trestle was buried. This line no longer exists. In just a short time, the train will have passed over the line into Columbia County. And now, a series of 34 pictures taken from about 1900 through 1938. We will turn the calendar back to 1843. In that year, the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad purchased from the Locks and Canal Company of Lowell, Massachusetts, this locomotive, number 3, originally named Conestoga. In 1872, it was transferred to the People's Railway and used in service between Pottsville and Minersville. When this line was taken over as part of the local trolley system, the number 3, also known as the Whippoorwill, was stored in the engine house at 12th Street in Pottsville, where it remained until 1925. It was then moved to the Schuylkill Haven car shop, where it was repainted. This picture was taken at that location. Number 3 was then exhibited at Schuylkill Haven in 1925 during that town's 175th anniversary. It was later moved to the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, where it is still on display, next to Baldwin's giant locomotive, 60,000. In the period after the Civil War, the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad built in their Reading shops several inspection engines. This is probably one of them. It was last used by the P&R Coal and Iron Company, a subsidiary of the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad. Very appropriately, it was renamed Black Diamond. For many years, it was in storage in the Auburn Roadhouse. In 1930, it was moved to Cressona and then to Reading. Finally, the railroad company sent it out to the St. Louis National Museum of Transport, where it is still on display. Some think it unfortunate that it was not kept closer to home. Here is a Mine Hill passenger train patiently waiting at Schuylkill Haven for the train from Philadelphia. This photo was taken by an unknown photographer around the turn of the century. The train is now only a memory and the freight house is gone. Next, a group of pictures taken at Cressona in 1926 when the photographer was 11 years old. The 3 photos show engines resting over the weekend at the old stone roundhouse. This building was erected in 1867 and raised in 1929. Perhaps these fellows are trying to decide who is going to push the Armstrong turntable. Now, two views of westbound passenger trains ready to pull out of Cressona for Minersville, Tremont, and Likens. Following are several pictures of typical motive power at Cressona. During this period, the activities at Cressona were like an operating museum, as all the engines had already seen many years of service and would soon be retired. They were aging but faithful workhorses. This old-timer is far from home. It was in storage at Cressona for some time after the Philadelphia suburban service was electrified, but was never in service at Cressona. As can be seen, necessary precautions have been taken against the coming winter snows. Homeward bound from the mines. Note the classic P&R four-wheel wooden caboose. Here we see a colliery crew heading up the valley above Beckville. In the late 1920s, more modern engines appeared at Cressona. This is a westbound train waiting at the station. For many years, Cressona had excellent passenger service, 6 trains a day in each direction. Sadly, the automobile gradually took its toll. When this photo was taken in 1934, only 1 train making a round trip to Likens and return remained. In a short time, this train also was withdrawn. The main line was still busy. Here we see a 1700 at Mine Hill Crossing near Cressona. A Philadelphia-bound train above Connors Crossing, Cressona. The early afternoon train from Philadelphia makes a stop at Connor to take care of passengers and mail for Cressona. The fireman of number 650 is taking care of his fire for the last time before he climbs down from his engine at St. Clair. Little does he realize that, just a few feet above him, a young photographer, armed with his trusty Kodak Hawkeye box camera, is risking life and limb clinging to the cliff in a desperate effort to record his picture for posterity. Now to Pottsville. The engine assigned to the yard crew was sometimes referred to as the Pottsville Pup. It was usually one of the Reading's perky little four-wheel camelbacks. However, there were exceptions, as we see here, when a 1500 was pressed into service, some pup. Incidentally, here we have the smallest and largest of the Reading Company's camelbacks. The number 676 was one of a group of only 2 high-speed 10-wheelers built in the Reading shops. 676 was a conventional 2-cylinder engine. 675 was originally built with 3 cylinders, but was later converted to 2 cylinders. They were the heaviest and last passenger camelbacks built for the company. The year is 1938. Our last 2 pictures are of the bright and shining Crusader on display at the Pottsville station before entering service between Philadelphia and Jersey City. The Reading has entered the streamline age.